Hey guys, last one for the day. I'm gonna hit on what is a husband and why do you care? So we're gonna hit a couple points. What is a husband? What the world tells you about husbands? What they should be? Why that's wrong? And then we'll close with the value of a husband. So what is a husband? A husband basically is the head of the household. He is the one that is tasked with provision. He is the one that should be laying his life down, sacrificing himself and his talents and his time for his wife and ultimately his children and his community. Um, that's just a high level, pretty basic. Now, what does the world tell you a husband is? They don't really have any of those things anymore because the world doesn't contain that nucleus of self sacrifice. If if the world understood the gospel, which it can't, but if it did, you would see that idea mimicked. Now, this is what makes this an interesting discussion, is that you can have non-Christians have great marriages, for example, but the thing that they miss, and this is where I think going back to being unequally yoked really comes into play, is what a woman is really looking for is to be led, is to be provided for, not that she can't provide for herself. That if a woman chooses to work and wants to be in the workforce, more power to her. If she wants to stay single and not go after a husband and pursue a family, okay, whatever you choose to do with your life, there still is a hard wiring inside the general female population to say that you can just see it. The mothering capabilities of women is just a joke. It's far superior to what a man can do. Now, that's in general terms. Any specific instances where it's the other way around is just the exception proving the rule. It's not necessarily the norm, and the norm isn't always right, by the way. So, how do you make sense of all this? I think that what the world will tell a husband is only love a woman if, and that's just a giant if written in like size 82 font, bold, underlines, italics, that if a woman loves you, if your community supports you, if you have financial means, all these ifs, then at that point you stay committed. There is no underlying foundation undergirding the commitment outside of I will do this, I will perform this merit, I will perform this role as a husband if you perform. That if is exactly the upside downness of the world. The only way through that is to see that the commitment itself is what produces the goodness that comes into a family. And that goes both ways. That's what's interesting. A husband commits, yes. A wife commits. A husband leads, a wife follows. Those are different roles, but the commitment is the same. The submission is the same. Now, the thing is, what do you submit to? In a lot of modern marriages, they'll submit to all kinds of things. They went to the same school, or the same socioeconomic background, or they're if you watch House of Cards, they're committed to just the supreme pursuit of power. And it doesn't matter how, that's the nucleus. That's what binds them together. It informs their decision making. When they cut somebody off in the Congress or kill someone or whatever in that show, it is always to serve a purpose, and that purpose is to attain more power. If you circle your life around that, it creates all these problems. I mean, obviously, you're going to create a ton of enemies. You may not have a very stress-free life. You may create turmoil by itself. If you pursue money, for example, if you can't get that money, what do you do? The thing about the Christian marriage is if you pursue self-sacrifice and righteousness, there's nothing that can deter that, because the goal is to lay your life out for the other person, and both are called to do this. Now, the difference is, on the whole, a man's role is to lead in this area, is to lead with self-sacrifice. A woman submits not because a man is demanding this. A woman submits because a man has won her over with the submission, with his submission to her and to God. Without that submission of his life, of his time, his talents. I mean, think about it. If a man goes and works all day and then takes the money that he has produced and then spends it all on himself, how would the kids eat, for example? Save a wife going out and working and then sacrificing her time. What are you literally doing? You're literally taking your time, going to do something productive, trading that time for value in the form of dollars, food, whatever, bringing that home and providing. That's the man's role. Now, that doesn't mean that a man can't have a woman work. It just means that in the end, somebody, somewhere has to make that trade. If you don't, you're just gonna, you can't pay your bills. You're gonna starve. You're not gonna be able to run a household. The world will tell you only do those things. Like I said, if. Now, why that's wrong is the minute you start to treat people as a transaction, which is I will perform, provided you perform. That's what a transaction is. We've entered into agreement. The transactional nature of it becomes I will perform if you perform. That undercuts the whole concept of the idea of marriage. The concept is a covenant. No matter what, this won't be broken. No matter what, we won't separate. And the more a husband realizes that, the better off in general you're going to be. So Bertha and I, for example, the lessons I've learned about this are exactly this. Whenever I'm not acting in accordance with what it means to be a husband, you can see the rift, the discord, the anger, the strife that comes into the household. Now, Bertha does a great job of redirecting me and informing me of how I'm not being loving and how I'm not being as good a provider as I should be in certain areas. And that's great feedback. I can look at that and roll that feedback into my decision making in order to effectuate the changes that are required for the household. I can also see, you can get feedback from other guys, you can get feedback from your community, and the whole point is to come back to this idea that your life is not yours, and that if once you take a wife, that your role is to be the high priest in the home. What that means is you're going to lay your life down constantly, every day, all the time, and that is the most important thing that a Christian husband needs to do. At the same time, that is exactly the opposite of what the world will tell you to do. The world will tell you to do things like, I'm going to do stuff for my kids, but once the kids are gone, what do you have? What marriage do you have left? Or said another way, I'm only going to do things for my wife. I'm always going to neglect my kids. Same thing. You're going to create a bunch of kids, and then ultimately people in the world that have all these issues because the family unit wasn't functioning as a cohesive unit. It was functioning disjointedly. And so I think that's what really brings home the value of a husband. The value of a husband is for him to lay his life down. With that comes all of it. Comes peace, comes harmony, becomes the fact that people want to be around you. You produce really excellent children. Your wife is looked after. She doesn't emotionally want for things. You're meeting those emotional needs. You have provided for your kids. So if some financial, you have enough sort of foresight into thinking, okay, I need to put some money away for a rainy day, or I can't consume copious amounts of alcohol on a daily basis, or smoke, or have a poor health life because I need to be around and be capable of things, of looking after the house, looking after the children, playing with the kids, taking care of your wife. Those things, when put in the proper context, do require a lot of effort, do require a lot of energy. And that's where the value of a husband really shows up. If you're just constantly thinking all the time, if you're thinking, okay, well, I'm only ever going to do these things if somebody does it first, you are not leading. You are in fact following, and somebody else is leading. And I think you upend the idea of what, if somebody has that mentality, on the whole, you upend the idea of what it means to be a leader. It doesn't mean to be the breadwinner, by the way. You can have a wife that makes more money than you, but what it means is you lead in the self-sacrificial part of it. You lead in the sense of like, there's a Bible story where a husband takes a wife. She goes, she cheats, she becomes a prostitute, and in the end, he comes and buys her back, and says, "She's my wife. I'm going to get her." That's what a covenant means. It doesn't necessarily, by the way, it's not a man and woman thing. It's just a story of Hosea and Gomer. I've heard countless stories of women who persist through a god awful man, and their marriage makes it. So it's just referencing the story, but that concept is what it means to be in a covenant, that you will literally lay your life down. Not I'm only going to lay my life down provided I can protect my money. I'm only going to lay my life down if my kids are good. I'm only going to lay my life down if my wife is following me or if she's behaving. I think it's the exact opposite. The minute you see your wife or your husband stepping out or being disobedient, discourteous, to a point where it's rude and disrespectful and cutting, the words cut you, that's an opportunity to show that other person grace. And it does take work. It takes work in the micro sense, and the larger the infractions, you may need help. You may need counseling. There's nothing wrong with counseling. You may need a community to talk to, somebody to decompress to, some person that you might need catharsis with. And those are what a husband can bring, provided that mentality is there of my life is not mine, and I'm going to lay my life out for those around me. So dropping a note in the comment section, let me know what you think. Hit the like and subscribe. It helps me out a lot. And we'll catch you on the next one.